A look at John's riveting discussion about legalizing marijuana in the state of Arizona.
Thanks for joining us on Newsmaker Sunday. We are going to talk pot today because you may very well in November of 2016 be voting on legalizing recreational marijuana in Arizona. It's the campaign to regulate marijuana like alcohol. Launched its petition drive in May. They need 150,000 valid signatures of registered Arizona voters to qualify for the November 2016 ballot. And joining us today is J.P. Holyoke. He's the chair of that campaign to regulate marijuana like alcohol.
Thanks for having me.
Tell me about what this would do, this initiative. What would it do?
Sure. What this initiative does is it allows for adults over the age of 21 to purchase and possess a limited amount of marijuana.
Can you tell me why? Let me stop you. Why 21? Why not 18?
That's a good question, but if it were up to me, I probably would have put the age at 25.
25.
That would have been my preference.
And this, I'm just guessing here, this gets back into the development of the young brain. That any kind of substances early on, in development of the frontal cortex especially,
Sure.
where decision-making, reasoning, judgment
Sure.
can become problematic with use of any kind of substances like this.
Absolutely, and particularly like alcohol, certainly has a much greater effect on those things. Nobody that's part of this campaign, that's a marijuana advocate, is going to say that it's okay for teenagers to use marijuana. Period, flat out, that's not okay. But the real question here is, how do we prevent that? Marijuana prohibition today has been an abject failure. Any teenager out there that wants marijuana has easily and readily accessible access to that marijuana. So prohibition's been a failure. What we're saying is, let's take this away from these criminal drug dealers and instead put it into a taxed and regulated business that has an incentive to keep it away from children rather than the incentive to sell to them.
Let me run you some numbers here. This is pretty shocking. I think the best, and it may not be an apples to apples, but the best comparison we've got in the Rocky Mountain West is Colorado. Colorado brought in $76 million in tax revenues from sale of marijuana in 2014. They are expecting now, they are on pace to make $125 million on marijuana. What do you think the numbers might be if this initiative were to pass in Arizona?
There's a lot of numbers that are being thrown out there, and certainly I've thrown my number out there. I put out a number and said, I think we're going to be able to provide to the education system here about $40 million a year. Now, certainly on the prohibitionist side, they ridiculed that number. They flat out said that I was being dishonest. Well, then the independent Grand Canyon Institute came out with their own study, and they said that my number was far too conservative, and they put the number much higher than that.
And where did they put it?
North of $50 million.
$50 million for education. So if this were to pass, you tax the cannabis, it's used for recreational use.
That's right.
You tax it at a rate of what?
It's a 15% surcharge tax on top of the ordinary city, state, and county sales taxes.
Right. In Colorado, their taxes, total taxes on pot are 28%. If you add up everything, about a third of it roughly is going to taxes.
Yeah.
So the money would go to education, and
That's
where
correct.
else?
So 80% of the money goes to education, 20% of it goes to public health care.
Okay, and this would be for 21 years or older. Now, about the amount of marijuana that could be used. As I read it, people would be permitted to grow 6 plants in their homes.
Yeah.
And I think, what is it? Is it a dozen plants for a family?
Well, no, it's 6 plants per individual with no more than 2 of those, 2 individuals growing at a single location.
Okay.
So you couldn't have, a large-scale cultivation
And
operation.
you could buy at a time how much? It was
1
an
ounce.
1 ounce, and that would be how often?
Well,
Any purchase.
any purchase up to 1 ounce.
So you're not limited in a time span at all
No.
on how much you can purchase at any.
That's correct.
How has it worked in Colorado with black market sales once you legalize recreational use? What happens?
Sure. There are some people out there that are making an argument saying, hey, this is going to eliminate the black market. Well, that's just not true. The black market exists on just about any substance you can imagine right now. There's still a black market for alcohol.
Yeah.
In fact,
Well, there is in the South. There's moonshine.
absolutely. So the idea that you're going to completely eliminate the black market just doesn't make sense. I mean, there's a black market for cigarettes also.
Right.
So I'm not willing to say that it's going to eliminate the black market, but it's certainly going to drastically reduce that black market. Because that adult that's buying marijuana today, if he has the option, he can say, well, I can go into this store that's a nice store that provides a variety and provides customer service where the products are tested, we know what the potency is, or I can meet a dude in the Circle K parking lot. Well, they're going to go to the store and they're going to buy a known quantity that's been tested and regulated.
The only difference with that is I guess if you go into a regulated store, you're known. If you want to keep your marijuana use on the D-low, you might want to continue to buy from the guy underground.
No.
No?
No, not at all. So an adult walks into a taxed and regulated adult use medical or marijuana store.
Not medical marijuana.
Not
this
medical.
is recreational.
This is recreational.
Okay.
Walks into that store, he simply has to provide proof of age. So just like buying beer.
This is one of the issues. The marijuana now being sold is not anything that we grew up with. This stuff is potent.
Not necessarily. I mean, I've heard that argument, but that argument is saying, I'm going to use like a beer and wine example here. Beer on average is about a 5% potency of alcohol. Wine is approaching 20. Are you telling me that that glass of wine is 4 times more dangerous than that glass of beer? I mean, it's kind of a ludicrous argument. And it frankly leads us to the idea that we're better off regulating it so those things are labeled rather than an unknown potency.
Have you extrapolated what this could mean to the penal system if you were to do this?
Absolutely. It would be
Do we know how much money could be saved?
I don't know that number I don't know. But I do know I can look at the 2012 Arizona Crime Report. And in 2012, Arizona arrested about 15,000 individuals for simple possession of marijuana. This wasn't growing, this wasn't selling, this was...
That would be over how many ounces to get popped for that?
Any amount.
Any amount you can
Any
get.
amount whatsoever. So 15,000 individuals in 2012 were arrested for simple possession of marijuana.
I thought we had a certain amount you had to be carrying to be busted for possession.
No.
It had to be over a certain amount.
Not at all.
No.
Any amount whatsoever. And the charge in Arizona is a felony charge.
This idea of a gateway.
It's been debunked 100 times over. I mean, I'm glad to have the discussion with you.
Well, I do wonder because, I mean, you talk to addiction counselors and many of them will tell you. I haven't met a kid who's using who didn't start with marijuana. I mean, they'll tell you that.
Sure. They would also tell you the same thing about alcohol or tobacco, or you could carry it all the way back to high sugary drinks and mother's milk if you want to. So,
You're saying it doesn't matter.
So how far back do you want to go on that? But here is some credibility to the gateway theory. Because oftentimes people will seek out marijuana. And when you have an illegal black market, you have this drug dealer who says, well, I've got marijuana here that you came looking for, and I've also got something over here. Would you like some of that? So by keeping marijuana illegal, you are taking something that many people use, and you are now introducing them to the black market of drugs where other drugs are then being offered.
That's an interesting take on it.
If there is a gateway, that's it.